Commander Shepard has been recovered. The Lazarus Project will proceed as planned.
Welcome to the Lazarus Project podcast. This is episode 15, Mass Effect podcast discussing its characters, lore, theory and opinion. Podcast is recorded live in the Ploppy 54 Gaming Discord server. So come join us there where you can listen to the raw, unedited version, and all the details you need to know can be found in the show notes. My name is Tim, and joining me today is Kraig.
Hello.
And our very special guest is the content creator and podcaster, N7 Kate.
Hello, happy to be here.
This episode, we're going to be talking about the state of Bioware that they posted, the future of Bioware games, Dragon Age and Mass Effect. And we're also going to have a quick chat with Kate here and find out a little bit more about her in case you don't know about her, which you should really do because you're Mass Effect fans. Yeah, no news this time. We'll jump straight into it. So welcome, Kate. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, so if you were to explain who you are in a tweet, how would you do that?
Oh my God. A ridiculously geeky girl gamer that's been gaming for a very long time, way back to the Commodore 64. An avid RPG fan and a Mass Effect nut. Yeah, I love anything Mass Effect, basically. Mass Effect is the best game I've ever played. It is the most formative game for me that sort of inspired me to become a content creator. And also to sort of fall in love with the medium that is video games. So yeah, I'm a huge Mass Effect and Bioware fan. But I like a wide variety of games, but probably RPGs is likely where my heart is, for sure. But I've been on YouTube now for, 10 years? It's got to be 10 years now, making content on Mass Effect, Bioware, many other games too.
Commodore 64, I used to have one of those.
Yeah, it was my dad's first console that he bought. It took like 15 minutes to load up a game. But yeah, that was my first experience.
So you say you've been on YouTube for about 10 years?
Yeah, about 10 years. I started it when I was living in Japan. So I lived in Japan for 4 years, taught English out there, and played Mass Effect 3. I first played Mass Effect when I was actually in Japan, because I had some friends that recommended it, and I was surrounded by Japanese, so I just wanted to play something in English and kind of thing. And I just fell in love with it. And then I got Mass Effect 3 delivered to me. And then obviously the controversy of the ending and everything else. And just started to watch other people making content and chatted about it with my friends. And then people you should do stuff. You should share your thoughts on things and opinions on things. And so, yeah, so it kind of started from there. And the first review I ever did was of Mass Effect. And it was the most seriously raw, tiny little webcam, a tiny little hand microphone that was kind of attached to me, sat on a chair with posters behind me of Mass Effect. It's really embarrassing. When you go back and watch my first initial stuff, I didn't know what I was doing back then, but I was just sort of chatting about it and talking about why it was my favorite series and characters and story and that kind of thing. And then it just kind of went from there.
Fabulous. Sorry, Craig.
I was just wondering, because you said about having Mass Effect 3 delivered. Did you start with Mass Effect 3 then?
No, I started actually with Mass Effect 1. I did start with Mass Effect 1. But I didn't play Mass Effect 1 when it first came out, when it first released. I got it, I got 1 and 2 together. And I got introduced to it first when Mass Effect 2 first came out. And I went round to a friend's house and he was playing Mass Effect 2, literally had just booted up the game. And it's obviously the very beginning where Shepard dies. And he just freaked out, completely freaked out. And I'm like, dude, if a game can make somebody like react and respond in that way, like I have to check this out. So then I ended up getting myself an Xbox 360, and then I had to get an imported version of the game, which came with an English soundtrack. So I started with Mass Effect 1. Didn't play any of the DLC for Mass Effect 1, I don't think. And then I jumped straight into Mass Effect 2. So I didn't have any gap in between the two games, which was absolutely amazing. And then obviously got the DLC for Mass Effect 2 when that came out, and then was just absolutely hooked. And then I ordered Mass Effect 3 Collector's Edition, which got delivered by this tiny little Japanese guy on a bicycle. Like just delivering it to my doorstep. And like just couldn't put it down, like absolutely just hooked on it. But yeah, so no, I did start with Mass Effect 1. But I was first introduced to it through Mass Effect 2, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That makes sense.
Which ending do you prefer?
Destroy. I always go for Destroy. It's my gut feeling was that was what our purpose had always been, to destroy the Reapers, to bring an end to the Reapers.
My thoughts exactly.
Control was what the Elusive Man wanted, and the Elusive Man was very clearly indoctrinated at the end. So I saw that as what the Reapers actually wanted, like a manipulation. And then Synthesis just felt wrong for me because I didn't feel like I had the right to make such a huge evolutionary choice like for the galaxy. So I went Destroy, and I see Destroy as my canon ending. I have played all three, but Destroy is definitely the one I will always pick as my canon ending, and it's the one I choose first. So yeah.
So you also cover lots of other games on your YouTube channel?
Yeah, I do.
Any particular favorites of as of late?
Well, I'm hooked on Starfield. I've played like 27 hours of it, and I'm absolutely like just lost in the world. So I'm planning to do a review of it, or first impressions of it. I tend to like, it depends on the mood I'm in. Like I got given a review code for Immortals of Aium from EA. Part of like EA's got something called content like creator network, which you can apply to be a member of. And they have to do like, they check your channel and everything else. And I finally got the green light for it. So I applied for a code of that, and they gave me it on PlayStation. And I actually really enjoyed it. It's like a first person magical combat, MCU style, like writing, and just, it was a nice kind of like palate cleanser. But I've been playing a lot of stuff. Like Baldur's Gate 3 I started. I was doing a multiplayer run through with Mother Mantis, who's another content creator. So hooked on that. I don't seem to pick really small games, which is a problem when you're a content creator, because I tend to pick like really huge, massive games. Like I was playing like Final Fantasy 16, which I was absolutely loving, and I'm like 80% through it, but I had to put it down to like that Starfield. So I'll go back to it, I'm sure, at some point.
How long did you wait for that creator network to come through?
I did it. Well, I only heard about it 2 months ago.
Oh wow!
And I know it's been going longer, but I've started to kind of reach out to some developers, like, you know, for games I'm kind of interested in covering.
Yeah.
And like the guys at Ascendant Studios were like, okay, like that's cool. Like if you want to apply for a code, like you have to go through this. And they're the ones that told me about the content like creator network. I can share it with you if you want.
No, I've been waiting for about a year and a half.
Have you? Oh my god! Well, I sent a tweet at them because they were like, "Oh yeah, like, you know, make sure you ask for a code." I'm like, guys, like I registered 2 months ago, like, and I'm still waiting. And then there was like a list of people under me that were the same. So I don't know if someone at Ascendant Studios contacted someone at EA and were like, "Come on, guys, get your act together."
Maybe. Let's no, mine just says pending. That's it.
Yeah, mine said the same for 2 months. I'm like, seriously? But it also might be because I have a lot of like Bioware content. Like I have a lot of like Mass Effect videos and lore videos, and
yeah, you also cover a lot of other games as well, don't you? So
yeah, so maybe that's why.
Yeah.
but yeah, like, so I probably will end up buying like anything Bioware I tend to buy anyway, just to support the studio. But yeah, so yeah, like that's where I'm at the moment. But yeah, it's just not enough time in the day.
True.
Like, at all. And I work as well, so it's balancing that in between everything else and real life. But you know, I can't complain. I do enjoy what I do.
And on top of all that, you've started your own podcast now as well, haven't you?
Yes,
How's that
actually, really good. Actually, yeah, I've been doing it since January. So we've done 7 podcasts so far. We do it kind of on a monthly basis, and we sort of have a nice kind of like little what's new section where we'll talk about like what we're playing at the moment, or watching, or reading, or whatever. Then we do like a news feature, kind of what you do, and talk about our opinions and thoughts on it. And then I've got like quite a long list of like community questions, like questions from the community, and I want to make sure I get around to answering them. So we always answer them as part of it. But it's going really well. Like the reception's been really great, and it's been really, really fun. But I want to get more guest speakers on. Like I'd like to get more guest speakers. And I do actually want to ask you, Tim. I want to do a Mass Effect special podcast in November.
All right.
So I might see if I can organize something with you, with Mother Mantis, and see if I can get anybody else on board.
Yeah, absolutely.
To maybe do like a specific Mass Effect themed one. I've already taken a few questions from the community, but I'm not sure yet how we're going to structure it. But maybe that could be something to do in November, because N7, right? N7 day. Yeah. So it might be good. Yeah. And yeah, I'm enjoying it. It's fun.
Sorry, for the people listening, what's your podcast called?
It's called the Normandy Newsfeed.
There you go. So make sure you check that out and subscribe to that as well.
Thank you. Yeah, it's fun. It's a really fun like type of content to create, you know, and you get more natural kind of discussions. And I like discussing games and debating things and talking about things and hearing other opinions. So it's a fun way to do that. Sometimes it's boring to always hear my opinion and no one else's, right? So it's good.
That's why I try to get Kraig to do most of the talking on our podcast. At the end of August, Bioware released a statement, and they got rid of 50 employees. They made them redundant. Some of them were offered to reapply for other jobs within EA or Bioware itself, not necessarily on the jobs they were doing. A couple of the biggest names went. The character creator of Varric, Mary
Kirby.
That's it. Mary Kirby, thank you. She went, and one of the Chris Christophian?
Lucas Chris Jansen.
That's the one. He was another big name.
Yeah, he's been at the studio since Baldur's Gate 1.
Yeah, didn't he write Baldur's Gate 1?
Yeah, he's been there for like 26 years at the studio.
That's crazy.
Yes, mad.
Imagine his severance package would have been quite substantial. 26 years.
Yeah.
So yeah. Then I also saw on, I think it was Game Rant website, that Dragon Age is going to be delayed. Which you would have thought maybe they need 50 people more to get it out on time, you know. But yeah, and so this is really what are your opinions on what Bioware are doing? They're saying they're going to concentrate now just on Dragon Age and Mass Effect. They got rid of the Old Republic. They passed it on to another studio.
Yeah.
So it's downsized them from there. And it goes on. There'll be a link in the show notes if you want to read the statement in full. But yeah, we'll start with our guest, Kate. What do you think is happening with Bioware?
Personally, I've been a bit worried about Bioware for a few years. To be fair, people leaving the studio has not been a new thing, you know. Really since 2018, when Drew Karpyshyn left, we've had some quite seasoned people leave the studio. But to lose 50 people is quite a significant number. I mean, that's like I think Bioware has like a development studio of maybe 300 plus people. So that's like 20%. When you think about it percentage, that's 20% of their staff. And a lot of the staff are from the Edmonton team, which is kind of like the old Bioware, like, you know, the OG Bioware kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
it was
is
a separate team that did Andromeda, wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah, it was it Montreal? Bioware Montreal? Was it?
Something
And
like
then
that,
they then got moved into EA Motive, I think, right? After the failure of Andromeda. They got like just
studio got
merged.
disbanded, didn't it? And
it did. It merged into another studio. So I think Edmonton is the only actual Bioware team, I think, at the moment. But yeah, like reading the article, like it's corporate. It's just corporate spiel. It's just full of, you know, kind of false nothings. You know what I mean? Like talking about we're doing this to like focus the team and, you know, and their commitment obviously to Dragon Age and obviously to the next Mass Effect and that kind of thing. And sort of trying to reassure people, I guess, that these layoffs are not going to have an impact on the quality of those games. But I don't see how they can't. Like losing 50 staff is very significant, but then it's even more significant and confusing when they're not just laying off staff, they're laying off veteran staff. This is staff that have experience. This is staff, and a lot of them are writers as well, like Mary Kirby, obviously, has been there since 2006. She's worked on all 3 Dragon Age games. Well, you know, Dragon Age Origins, Dragon Age 2, and obviously Inquisition, and also on Dreadwolf. She's the creator of some of my favorite characters in Varric, who's just amazing, and Vivienne as well. It's concerning, you know, especially when, you know, obviously Bioware released. I don't think Mass Effect Andromeda was as bad as everybody made out, right? It had an unfortunate launch for sure, and it had some bugs and it had some issues, but I don't think it was as bad as people made out. However, Anthem really was and lacked that creative vision and lacked that. It just didn't feel very Bioware. And my worry is as if they start to lose these veteran people, that they are going to lose that creative blood. They're going to lose that experience to steer the ship. And we always say, you know, Bioware, but we forget that it's a team. Like the people that made Mass Effect and that made Dragon Age, they are a team of people. And every member of that team plays a crucial part in developing that game. And my heart absolutely breaks for the people that have worked there at the studio for so long. And I don't know if it's just a cynical part of me, but I feel that this was more of a financial decision on EA, because obviously these more veteran, experienced team members would have probably been on a higher salary.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So I wonder, I don't see how you would make a choice to lay off some of your best staff when you're right in the middle of the development of Dragon Age Dreadwolf, and you should be upping the ante with that game to get that game out and then moving into the next Mass Effect. It just seems like such a confusing decision, unless it is just purely motivated by like profit margins and money. That's my view on it anyway. So I am worried. I'm not going to lie. I am concerned. And I do really think a lot's riding on Dreadwolf. I really do. Yeah, I'm hoping we get some kind of insight look into what the hell is going on in Bioware. Maybe Jason Schreier can do his magic like he did for Andromeda. But yeah, that's generally my take on it. Yeah.
What about you, Kraig? What are your initial thoughts on the post?
Well, I mean, just like everyone else, I mean, it's like it's shocking, and it was. I don't think there's any way you can really read that and think that it's a positive thing. I was actually going to ask before you said about the financial side, if you thought it was a financial decision, and yeah, to be fair, there's not really anything else it could be, unless maybe it was something to do with Well, I would say that maybe it's something to do with people disagreeing with the vision of what the story was going to be. But a lot of the developers who were tweeting about it seemed quite surprised. So,
Yeah.
I don't know if that would really be the case. I can only imagine it was a knock-on effect from something. Because EA's the developer, isn't it? EA's the ones that give them the money.
EA is the publisher, yeah, and this
Yeah.
is part of EA's overarching. Because I think Andrew Wilson, I don't know if it was March or beginning of the financial year, did already announce that EA were making, I think, 6% cutbacks and redundancies and firings, 6% of their all overarching, and obviously that's filtered down to Bioware. That are losing 20% of their staff. So this is definitely coming from EA. This decision is definitely from EA. I can't imagine that the people at Bioware would be like, yeah, sure, let's cut our staff, no problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I definitely think this is coming from EA for sure. And that's the problem when you're beholden to a publisher.
Mm. But are you saying then that other developers under EA, other studios, are you saying they've had to make cutbacks as well?
Yeah, I think there are other students that have other studios that have had to make cutbacks, but I don't think to the extent that Bioware have had to. And I'm wondering if that is to do with performance. And you look at Respawn, right, that made the Star Wars Jedi Survivor, and Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor. Those games have been very well received and done very, very well. So I doubt they've had as much cut, maybe, but I don't know. But I do know. I think there's other studios. I'm not sure. I might Google and see if I can find that out. But yeah, I think it was 6%. I think Andrew Wilson was saying.
So they're not, just because it's got Bioware on the name, that they're not one to. That's not going to save them. If they want to if the EA want to close them, they're going to close them.
Yep. Yeah, that's it. I mean, it didn't with the Dead Space. Know, the guys that made the original Dead Space, what were they called? I forget their name. That's really bad.
Visceral.
That's it, Visceral. Oh God, that's shocking. Yeah, they got closed down, right? And no, yeah. Oh God, I'm so nervous because, Bioware I've always loved that studio, but I've got to remember it's not just the studio; it's the people that make the game.
Yeah.
It's not the name.
I think it does kind of. I think the studio's clearly been going down this route for a long time, though.
Mm-hmm.
Like this isn't necessarily something that's just. I mean, obviously, it's came out of nowhere, but I feel like they've kind of always been going in this direction. Well, not always, but since I don't want to say since Andromeda's release, but I feel like that was a stepping stone that eventually led to where we are right now.
I think it was even further back than that. I think it was Mass Effect 3, really, because you can see that the game was rushed towards the end. Which, if BioWare were self-publishing, a bit like Witcher 3 and that, they took as long as they needed. Obviously, can't say the same about Cyberpunk because they wanted that out.
They took a long time with Cyberpunk. Like when the development cycle, when they announced it to when it came out, was a long time, I think. But Mass Effect 2 came out in 2010. Mass Effect 1 came out in. Hold on. Oh, no, it's giving me Legendary Edition. Come off of it.
2007.
Okay, 2007. So that's 3-year development cycle between Mass Effect 1 and, Mass Effect 2.
Mass Effect 3
and then Mass Effect 3 came out in 2012 in March. So that's 2 years.
Yeah.
And Mass Effect 3 was a huge endeavor. All the storylines that they had to pull together and all the choices that you made in 1 and 2 having culmination in 3. To produce the level of quality that they did produce in 2 years, I still think is absolutely incredible. And my heart breaks that they weren't given longer, and what could have happened, had they been given longer.
What they can do is absolutely fantastic. So if you think about Andromeda, that game was actually only made in 18 months.
Yeah.
They had something like 5 years development, but because it was so mismanaged.
Mm-hmm.
They
it was in
wasted all that
pre-production
time.
for absolutely ages, wasn't it?
When EA said, "Look, enough's enough. We need some money back on our investment."
Yeah. And you can kind of understand that. I mean, I suppose with Mass Effect 3, like, they didn't really have to do that much pre-production. I mean, I suppose they did build some new engines and things, like the combat system changed quite significantly in 3 compared to 2, though it wasn't as big a jump as it was from 1 to 2, you know. But I suppose they didn't have to, like, completely create the world from scratch. Although they didn't have to do that technically with Andromeda. But by choosing to go to a new galaxy, they kind of forced themselves into that situation, didn't they?
And EA demanded they use the Frostbite engine as well, which they had no idea.
Sucks, and I don't know why. I'm glad they're not doing that for the next Mass Effect. I'm so glad that the next Mass Effect is on Unreal Engine 5, I think it's going to be.
You still think we're going to get another Mass Effect?
Yeah, I'm hopeful. I don't know. Like, it'll get made. It'll get made. If it doesn't get made under EA, then if people still want to make it, I mean, there have been studios that have successfully done projects through Kickstarter, through early access, right? Who knows? Maybe a new development studio will form from it, right? The problem that they might have is that EA have the rights to Mass Effect. That's the problem, right? Do they? Do EA have the rights?
They will do, yeah.
Yeah, okay, they can't do that then. God damn it. This is one thing. I want them to get away from EA, honestly.
I do think there's an important question there, though. Like, do you think where BioWare is now is a product of EA or a product of BioWare?
I think it's a little bit of both, you know. I think obviously there has been some definite influence from EA in terms of EA following, you know, trends and games as a service and forcing certain things, like, you know, onto games, like forcing multiplayer, you know, into, like they did with Mass Effect 3, which actually worked in their favor. Then they forced multiplayer, I think, into Inquisition, didn't they? And then obviously we got Anthem. So I think part of the pressure does come from publishers, but Jason Schreier's deep dive reports also showed that Bioware's not completely not to blame, you know, in everything that's going on. And making video games is a complicated process, and you need to have a very clear vision, and you need to have departments that are communicating clearly. And it seemed like it didn't have that, right? With like Anthem, you know, like even when they showed the footage, like the gameplay, you know, reveal that they did, and like people working in the game going, "That's our game." Like, we're working on that? Like, that is bad. You know, you've got your own team going like, we're making that game. All right, okay. And it's got to come out in, what, 18 months? You're kidding me, you know? So, yeah, I think a lot of the problem is it has been mismanaged, but you don't know how much of that is like their fear of how much freedom do they have? Because you have studios like Respawn that have been given quite a lot of freedom, like to make really good single player experience in Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. So, and that's worked. So I don't understand why it wouldn't work for BioWare. If that, you know what I mean? It seems like they've had some good releases like in their EA Originals program, right? Like A Way Out and It Takes Two, which was my game of year when that came out.
That's the thing as well, though. It does seem like EA's sort of turned
a corner.
Yeah, kind of turned a corner, and then just kind of because you can make the argument that all of this started with the crunch time of Mass Effect 3 and kind of led to maybe BioWare losing its enthusiasm with it for itself and everything.
Yeah.
But at the same time, as you're kind of sort of eloquently saying, EA's changed. So really, isn't BioWare really all that's to blame, really? But it depends on if you really want to trace it back to crunch time and sort of them losing their own enthusiasm for what they do. But if you're going to make that case, then why did Casey Hudson come back and then leave again, you know?
Yeah, and so same with Mark Darrah. Now he's come back on as a consultant, hasn't he? On Dragon Age Dreadwolf. So I am reassured to know that he is there. You know what I mean? Kind of consulting on it. I don't know whether he's leading. I don't think he's leading it, but certainly consulting on it.
Until he gets laid off.
Yes, yeah. It's without knowing what's going on behind the scenes, and the more concern I have is that we have not seen anything. We haven't seen anything concrete really of the game, right? And I am very much of a belief, like, don't overshare, like don't show too much. I think that's a mistake because video games are iterative, and what you may show at one point may not actually end up in the game, and you're going to leave yourself like vulnerable to consumers, and sort of saying you're mismarketing or misselling the product. I think Cyberpunk had that problem, and CD Projekt Red had that problem. They overshared, but not showing anything is also very bad, and it doesn't instill much confidence, right? So I really do think that, like, Bioware I don't need anything on next Mass Effect because that is years and years and years away, right? Like, they're just focusing on Dragon Age at the moment. But also this Dragon Age, like, if it is to do with Solus, right? That's like, is that like a direct sequel then to Inquisition? Because they've never really done that in Dragon Age. They've always been self-contained. They've always been in the world and in the lore, and there are some repeat characters that appear, but there's never been like a direct sequel like Mass Effect was.
That's
very true.
So I'm very curious as to what it is. Like, is it a sequel? Is it self-contained? Like, we don't know anything. And obviously we're assuming that the Dreadwolf is Solus, because of Inquisition. And obviously, is it the Trespasser DLC,
They did release that sort of information video where they talked about Solus. I think they've kind of made it clear that it is
confirmed it is Solus, yeah. And we've seen him in the teaser trailers, haven't we?
Yeah, that's one I think I meant.
Yeah, so but I'm fascinated by that, because that's one of the things why I think Mass Effect is so special, because it is a trilogy, because it does tell a continuous story, right?
Yeah.
I liked that about Mass Effect, so I was kind of excited at that prospect for Dragon Age Dreadwolf, but we definitely need to see something, like, and I hope it will be good. I mean, obviously they've changed approach on it a few times, right? So how long has it been in pre-production? If it's changed direction quite a few times, and that's why I'm so heartbroken by these layoffs, because quite a lot of them are key writers, and it feels like they're not paying respect to their writing team. And that, for me, is the most important. It's not like there are other important parts of development, don't get me wrong. But if your writing is not good, if your story, your characters, your lore are not good, people are not going to play it, right? Like, it's Bioware. It's an RPG, right? Like, that's what Bioware's known for. So the fact that they've laid off some of their best writers who really know their stuff and know their lore, that worries me, I
mean, in that respect, it kind of, like you say, it can't just be Bioware. I mean, EA laying people off and then laying off those people, it kind of screams, because I don't think Bioware would choose to lay off people like people of that caliber.
Yeah, you don't usually see layoffs like just before a big game is supposed to release. It usually happens when, like, they're making, like, pre-production making games, and then the publisher pulls it out and says, we're canceling that, right? And then they have to make layoffs because they can't continue to pay these people to develop something that isn't got funding behind it anymore, right? Or a game is released and it performs really poorly, and they don't recoup their costs, and then they have to lay off people. So to lay off people right now, like before, like when they're really at the most important crunch time for, like, Dreadwolf, I can't understand it. It's crazy.
I mean, in terms of writing, I think Dreadwolf is already far enough along that it won't be too badly impacted.
Yeah, I think more it'll impact the next Mass Effect. That's what I think. And obviously, I mean, like Mac Walters left, didn't he, in beginning of this year, in January. He's gone.
Yeah.
And he was pretty key, especially Mass Effect 2 and 3, I think. I don't know. I mean, obviously, it's being led by Mike Gamble, so he's been there for a long time, right? And Mike Gamble knows his stuff. So, but again, it's not one person, that makes the difference. It's not one person that makes that game or develops that game or comes up with the creative ideas. It's a team of people. So you need a good team around you, and because it's a big studio as well, I think that is harder. The more people, I can get what they're saying about sort of, like streamlining to a degree, because the larger that your staff is, the more complex it is to have to like communicate and have those channels of communication and coordinate between big teams of people, because people have their own individual creative ideas, right? So in some ways, like I was watching a documentary on Hades, on the people that made Hades, and it's like a team of 20 people. It was like a documentary done by NoClip. It was really good. It's like a 5-parter that just goes deep dive into the early access and how that game got made. It's really fascinating. I recommend you watch it if you haven't seen it. It's on YouTube. And that was just a team of 20 people, but every member of that team was so crucially important and we're reliant on each other, and so like I'm fascinated by video game development. Like I'm absolutely fascinated by it. I've always been kind of interested in it. But I don't like the fact that so many people have lost their jobs. Like I don't think that's right. I think 300 staff is a good number, because you look at like Larian that made Baldur's Gate 3, right? And that's a pretty big team of very experienced developers. They've been together for a long time. They know each other. They know how they all work, right? They work well together. They know what they're good at, and they're good at making them. But then you have massive development studios like what Ubisoft like employs, and it's just too many people. Therefore all their games are just generic, because they're just not all of them, but you know what I mean? They all have like this core kind of like everything feels samey for Ubisoft for me, because it's just too many hands, too many people, not enough direction, not enough creative vision to differentiate for me.
That is a really interesting point, though. Like there is a big difference between like Larian Studios and Ubisoft. They're two very opposite sides of the spectrum in terms of how you develop games. But like the big difference, I think, between like Larian Studios, for example, and Bioware is Bioware's just working with established IP now, and they've got the pressure of people. I mean, I mean, Baldur's Gate was already an established IP, but not as, I don't think as
not for a long time as well. Like the last time we had a Baldur's Gate game was like Jesus. When did Baldur's Gate 2 come out? Like 2000. 2000 Baldur's Gate 2 came out. So it's been like 23 years since the last Baldur's Gate game. So long time.
I mean, I just feel like the spotlight and the pressure, I think, is a lot more on BioWare to get their games out. And I mean, there's a whole other question as well about when the next Dragon Age comes out. If it's a direct sequel, is that even necessarily a good idea at this point? Because when did Inquisition come out? I mean, how long's it been? And
2018, was it?
I don't know. Was it?
Let's have a look. Google.
No, it was earlier actually, wasn't it?
2014. 2014. So Jesus. So next year is 10 years since the last Dragon Age game came out.
And I know, like, Dragon Age fans and Mass Effect fans, like they have to be very patient to still be holding on to whenever the next installment's coming out. But like, especially if you're looking at like newcomers, though, because you got to consider that as well. Like Dragon Age Inquisition worked brilliantly because, like you said, Kate, they're kind of self-contained stories. This next one's connected to Inquisition, and any newcomers expected to have played a game that came out 10 years ago.
And played the DLC, because the DLC is pretty crucial when it comes to the Dreadwolf, when it comes to Solus. I think it's the Trespasser.
I'm gonna press my mouth up to the mic when I say, Tim, you need to play Trespasser.
You have to. It is really key for the lore. I am gonna have to make a story so far video for Inquisition. I did one for Dragon Age 1 and Dragon Age 2. I'm gonna have to make one for Dragon Age Inquisition and the DLC.
I mean, to be fair, Inquisition might it might follow the same suit as Inquisition, because if you didn't play Dragon Age 2, you wouldn't know who Corypheus is, but they still explain it. But Corypheus does actually appear in Dragon Age 2, so although Inquisition is not a direct sequel, it has that through thread, doesn't it?
Yeah.
There's not a complex history with Corypheus, though. He was just a guy who turned up and you fought him and he came back. You didn't really know too much about him, did you?
Yeah, and then it's also understanding the character relationships, right? Like, because Varric is going to be in the next one, 100%. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Cassandra, right? I wouldn't be surprised if we do have some returning characters, and they obviously have history, right, with Solus and
I need to see. I need to see my Inquisitor. I don't care if there's a new protagonist. I need to see my Inquisitor.
Maybe I was disappointed we never got to see our Grey Warden, like, really, in Dragon Age Inquisition. But we got to see, like, Hawk, didn't we? Which is really cool.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. So that would be cool. But obviously, like, and then you've got to factor in console hardware, right? Because if you played it on PlayStation 4, I suppose. So would that save transfer across onto PS5? Maybe
they would probably use the keep, though, wouldn't they?
Maybe use the keep, yeah, like they did.
Yes.
But I mean, like, for your character design, your character look, you know, if you wanted your character to look the same as they did, you know what I mean?
I don't want to do the same thing we did with Hawk. You know, we have to design them from scratch again.
Yeah.
That's just not
It's hard enough designing my character just for my character. Like, I had to do it 3 times in Dragon Age Inquisition because I couldn't settle like at all. So like I played through the beginning prologue of Inquisition like 3 times before I actually settled on my Inquisitor. Ridiculous.
It also ruined the surprise as well, didn't it? It's like
yeah.
They could have.
True, very true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you kind of knew he was going to be in it. Yeah, that's true.
What they really should have done is had them wearing a mask or something, and then gone Hawk, and then giving you the option to recreate the Hawk. So when they take off the mask or something, it's your character that you've just designed.
Maybe.
Rather than going into a menu, designing your Hawk, and then 10 minutes later they appear in the story. It's like, kind of.
Well, the way they revealed Hawk in that scene, though, they kind of panned up from Hawk's feet, I think. So I was just kind of under the impression that they had planned to import it, but then later on realized how big of an undertaking it was or something.
I'm really curious as well with the development because like, you know, developers play games, right? And when you get key games that come out, right? And then they're like, oh God, it's going to be compared to this game or to that game, right? So you know that the next Dragon Age is going to unfairly get compared to Baldur's Gate 3 and is never going to be able to live up to it. I mean, that game was in early access for 3 years, you know? It's a fine, polished, fine-tuned, you know, product. And it is the product of 3 years of community feedback and community, like, communication, right? You can't compete with that. Like, that's impossible. But, you know, it's a fantasy RPG, right? It's going to get compared. And you know that the next Mass Effect is going to get compared to Starfield.
There's also, I mean, do we know how long it took to make Baldur's Gate though as well?
It was in early access for 3 years, and then before that, I'm not sure.
Because if Biowares had longer than Baldur's Gate 3, then it's kind of fair to compare them. You know?
Yeah, but also the way in which that game was developed, like, is like early access is like. It's such a different way of developing a game because in a way, like the community are technically funding it, right? Because they're paying for the game up front. So Larian didn't have to worry about where that money was coming from, right? From a publisher or owing to a publisher or being accountable to a publisher. But then also they constantly iterated on it and constantly updated it and constantly took feedback from the community, tweak characters, tweaks game systems and things like that. Sometimes when you're developing a game in-house, and it's just because I've done a lot of reading on development and things and insight on what, you know, developers are saying, but you become quite insular, like, to your game, and sometimes you lose sight of things. So then when your game comes out and people are like, why didn't you put that in? Or why didn't you put that in? It's because you've become quite like, you just focus on that game, for the however many years you've been developing it, but you don't know how people are going to respond to it. But you do get that with early access. So I'm going to do a video. I'm so fascinated by early access. I'm actually going to do a video on the ethics of early access because I think it's really interesting, like direction, like for the industry. So I want to do a video on it. But yeah, I don't know. It's tricky. But they're going to get compared, or compared to The Witcher 3, right? Like. But I don't want that. I don't want that. Like, I am tired of open world games with no real purpose or reason for that open world. Like, I'm tired of bloat, right, in games. And I like games that I'm starting to realize I like games that are more focused and tell good stories and have good characters and have good world building and have purpose to everything. Which you had with the original trilogy. I want them to go back to that. I didn't, I didn't.
Mass Effect 1 wasn't entirely focused though. Like Mass Effect 1 had a little bit of.
Yeah, they dabbled. They dabbled,
Yeah.
didn't they? Yeah, they bless them with the Mako. They definitely dabbled in it. It's funny because you see things in Starfield now. You're like, oh yeah, they did that in Mass Effect 1, like with the planetary exploration and points of interest and stuff like that. It's funny. You can clearly see that, like even Bethesda might have been influenced by things that have come before. But I think, it's just even when you're making a game, like, that in a few years' time, like, there are going to be so many games where, like, open world exploration is going to be like what it was in Elden Ring, like, where you don't have any waypoints and you just discover things organically, right?
Yeah.
And so it's interesting. But I really do want to see what they've got, what's coming, because I do love Bioware and I always have done. And I want them to do well. I really want them to succeed. Like, I really do. But I'm nervous. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I do think everything really rides on Dragon Age being successful.
Dreadwolf, yeah, it's not a bad franchise to. I think Bioware tried a new IP in Anthem, didn't they? It did not work. You know what I mean? So now they are going back to tried and tested and true, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's a good thing. They know Dragon Age, that world and lore is already built for them. So they don't have to worry about all of that. So hopefully they can just focus on a really good story and good gameplay, right? I enjoyed Inquisition a lot. So but it sounds like they're going more action focused, which I'm also a bit like, okay, I'm not really too sure about that. But because there was like leaked footage, wasn't there, like a while back?
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess we'll see. What about you, Tim? Like, what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much similar to what you've already said, really. I think personally, I think that everything kind of now rides on Dragon Age being commercially successful. Because if it isn't, I think that's it. I think that the Bioware will be closed down. They've had Andromeda, which didn't sell well. They've had Anthem, which are a complete flop. They called a little bit of respect back with the Legendary Edition. That went better than expected. But it's not a new game. It's
just more polished.
Yeah. So it's not going to draw in as many.
But the really cool thing with the Legendary Edition is it pulled in a new generation of Mass Effect fans and Bioware fans at a time when they really, really, really needed that. They needed some fresh blood.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mac Walters, and you're listening to the Lazarus Project podcast.
Because I streamed, the entirety of Legendary Edition. It was awesome. It was amazing to have like people watching, and so many people in the chat were like, I have never played this before. Like, I've just started the game and I'm at this point and oh my God, I'm in love with this world and it's amazing and I can't wait to play more. And half of me was jealous because I'm like, the ability to experience the trilogy for the first time again, that must be so special, right? To have never played it and get to experience it for the first time. But also, I was so excited and I was so happy for those people. And also excited for Bioware because I was like, this is fab because this is going to pull in a new generation of people that are going to be invested in the next Mass Effect and that are likely to put money down and buy that game, right? And are attached to that world and those characters. I almost feel that EA should have done the same with Dragon Age, like remastered it, re-released the trilogy, like the first, well, maybe not the first 3, but maybe 1 and 2 at least, or put it together as a package, right? Yeah. Like polished and refined to because it's been a long time, like we said, nearly 10 years since Dragon Age Inquisition. People have, unless you're a hardcore fan, there are many other games out there to compete with now, and many people might have forgotten about it, right? And be like, "Oh, Dragon Age? Oh, yeah, I forgot. That's like really old series kind of thing." So many new gamers and new generation of gamers may well never have played Dragon Age Origins, which is the
Dragon
best
Age
one.
Legendary Edition would go down really well.
I think so. And I just think that might be the boost of interest that they need. Possibly, or some funding behind them, you know.
I do think if you're gonna, because I feel like Dragon Age Origins is one of those ones that looks so dated, and it kind of
it's so good though. Have you played Origins, Kraig?
Oh yeah, I have.
Nice.
I'm just saying that.
Yeah.
I don't mind the graphics myself, but I'm just saying if you compare it to that whole fiasco with the GTA remastered trilogy, and just how disastrous that was. I feel like Origins is one of those games that if you remaster it, it'll just either look funky or it won't be worth like the price of whatever it will be.
Yeah.
So I think they should just go all out and remake it if they're going to touch it.
Huh. Right. Well, it's not like EA haven't funded remakes. They did the Dead Space this year, didn't they? Which did very well.
Yeah, because I even though Origins release I think was quite close to Mass Effect 1, Mass Effect 1 doesn't seem to look
dated.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think maybe there was the concern as well that whether or not people would engage with the gameplay, but like with the more tactical nature of it, right, and the more top-down kind of like almost turn-based sort of style of it, even though it's not turn-based, it's obviously action. But I think the new Baldur's Gate has clearly shown that you bring a good story, good characters, good world, people will play, the game or whatever. And so, because even with Mass Effect, they made it more casual gamer friendly. That's a horrible term. I hate that term. But they made it more mainstream.
See, Kate, I'm not sure I believe you. Are you saying that when people make good games, people will play them?
Exactly. If you make good games, people will appear. People will follow.
Wow.
It's true. We've been saying it for years, but EA haven't been listening.
Ubisoft, take some notes.
Exactly. We'll see with Ubisoft. My everything's riding, I think, on Star Wars Outlaws. Which I'm interested in. That looks good, that game. So I'm very much looking forward to that. The idea of being able to play it like a scoundrel, right? That's the fantasy I'm living right now in Starfield. Right? But it looks cool, and I like Star Wars, so I'm very much looking forward to that. But we will see.
Yeah, cool. It's just we've already got Starfield though. That's my only.
I know, right? And that's funny because like I think for me, like Mass Effect always had that kind of like monopoly on space and sci-fi, right? And a good sci-fi game, right? Yeah, there wasn't much of that out there at the time, right? So it was very kind of unique and original and really exciting and really cool. The idea of being able to explore planets and go out into space and meet different alien races and romance different alien races from Mass Effect 2 onwards. So yeah, like, but now it doesn't have that, you know what I mean? There are other IPs in that genre, right? That are flexing their muscles, so to speak. So I hope they're paying attention to what is going on out there, and they are looking at other games and what other development studios are doing, and maybe taking ideas to add to their own ideas. I don't know. But I just do think they have to evolve in some way as well. Not totally change it, because the core of what there is amazing and great. But I do think they need to evolve it in some way.
I was wondering what you guys thought about, or if you hadn't. I mean, I don't want to try and take over, Tim. I just wondering.
No, go for it.
I was wondering what you guys thought of the Humanoid Studios project and what Casey Hudson's working on.
I haven't heard of that. What's that? Is that the new IP that Casey Hudson's working on?
Yes, well, Humanoid is the name of the studio. That he
Okay.
created.
Yeah.
I don't. He's got a name for the project.
Canadian, good old Canada. Let's have a look. Oh wow! I'm just looking at their website.
Yeah, it's clear that we're getting another sci-fi. I mean, they already said actually in the website.
It looks sci-fi, even when you look at the like there's like an image on the front, which is crazy. It's like this big skull kind of remains, and then it's like this little guy or girl, like with like spacesuit on. That looks cool. I'm all up. Oh man, that looks almost cyberpunk-esque as well, like in the art style. Like futuristic utopia kind of. That looks interesting. That looks very cool. I'm interested.
They do say that imitation is the best form of
flattery,
of compliment, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I'm always interested to look at like the people in the team, and what they've done before, like what their pedigree is. That's why I was kind of interested in Immortals of Aium, because a lot of the development team, because it's a brand new studio, Ascendant Studios, and a lot of the team come from Telltale Games, which are known for good stories. So that was kind of what piqued my interest on Immortals of Aium. Oh, they're hiring, aren't they?
Yeah, it's very early on, but I mean, it's a question of like, because I feel like they're not going to have too much trouble. I mean, they're going to have some experienced people working on it, and they're not going to have a publisher sort of meddling. So
more independent studio, yeah, for sure. Like not having EA kind of. That's the thing when you have got a publisher. Like, yes, you've got revenue coming in, right? But also you're kind of beholden to that publisher. But even a lot of independent studios will go to different publishers for funding, and they'll pitch a game, right? So, but it's different being owned by someone as it is like being independent, because you can like choose who you want to pitch to or who you want to work with, Oh, I'm very much looking forward to seeing what comes from that studio.
But yeah, I mean, there's already like so many concerns though around the next Mass Effect game as it is.
Yeah,
it really does make you question, as I think we kind of already mentioned, is like if it will really even happen at all. To be honest, it's such an ambitious undertaking with so much stuff to consider, like choice wise, and if they are going to ignore major decisions, how are they going to go about that?
Or choose a canon ending if it does follow on. Like they will have to make that choice unless it's set so far in the future. But even then, like you couldn't choose a synthesis ending because you'd still see repercussions of that kind of thing. For me, the trailer made it look like Destroy, because we saw a lot of derelict Reapers, like corpses, didn't we, and stuff. So for me, my gut said, well, when I looked at it, I'm like, that's got to be the Destroy ending. It's got to be. But the thing is, you can't please everyone, and they've got to stop focusing on trying to please everyone, right? And just focus on the story that they want to tell. You are going to have some people that will be disappointed, but you just got to accept that. You can't please everyone. And when you try to please everyone or, cater to everyone, that's when you tend to have your, like, that sort of like very mediocre, like across the board sort of game, because you're trying to please everyone.
Okay, so final thoughts. Kraig, any final thoughts on Bioware's future?
I'm going to say something that's kind of hopeful, because we've kind of been We've been saying a lot of negative stuff, and which is understandable given the situation. But I think the future has to be bright for it, because you look at how far along Dragon Age is. I think Dragon Age is a sure deal in how well it's going to do, because I mean everyone's all up with the fantasy hype at the moment with Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to do well, and I think BioWare will come back from it. I do believe they will. I don't know if they'll ever be the same, but I don't think BioWare is going to shut down.
Okay, Kate, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'm the same. Like, obviously, yes, I'm worried, but also I love this studio, right? And the people that work there, and I really hope like that it does do well. Like, not only for the fans, but also for the team that's worked on it for so many years. And I hope it will go well. I think it does all right on Dreadwolf. I think there must be a lot of pressure there. But I think there is a real. I mean, BioWare, to a degree, should feel comfortable to some degree, because the BioWare fans and community are so faithful and so passionate. You know, they are going to get the next Dragon Age, right? They are definitely going to buy it. You know, many people, if they do make another Mass Effect, will get the next Mass Effect even more than normal, thanks to the Legendary Edition. So there's definitely demand there. I'm not worried about sales. I just hope that people. I don't want people. I think now sometimes people have unrealistic expectations for games, and like what happened with Cyberpunk, right? Like where the hype was so real, so high that, like, you know. So I hope people will enjoy it, and I hope people do well. And I'm trying to be hopeful, because I really want more games from BioWare, and I want more Dragon Age, and I want more Mass Effect, because I absolutely love those worlds, those characters, and I'm looking forward to more stories in those worlds. So
Absolutely, yeah.
You know,
they do build some fantastic worlds.
Yeah, I mean, even just talking about it's making me want to go back and play Origins and 2 in Inquisition. I don't have time to do that because I've got too many other games to play and content to create. But yeah, like, they're fabulous. So I'm looking forward to more.
Wonderful. And for me, yeah, pretty much the same, really. I desperately hope there's going to be another Mass Effect, and what I'd like them to do is take elements of Baldur's Gate 3 and elements of Starfield and use their own creative purposes and just mush it all together, because I think they'll be able to create something truly wonderful with their talent that they do have in the building. So all it leaves me really to say is thank you so much for joining us, Kate. Where can people find you if they would like to come and follow you and see your content?
I am on YouTube at N7Kate. I am on Twitch, though I tend to stream on YouTube mainly at the moment. Also N7Kate, and I'm calling it Twitter because I can't bring myself to call it X, to be fair. But yes, I am on X/Twitter. Which is also at N7Kate. So you can find me on there. I do have a Discord, but if you pop onto my YouTube channel, you'll be able to see the link for that if you want to join. There are many other like-minded fellow massive BioWare Mass Effect Dragon Age fans on there, and obviously people that like lots of other games too. Like, at the moment, the chat's going crazy with Starfield stuff at the moment. Before that, Baldur's Gate 3. So yeah, that's generally where you can find me.
Fabulous. And Kraig, where can people follow you?
Well, you can't find me on X, but you can find me on Twitter with the handle at Kraig and his Mac. And
my name's Tim, also as Ploppy54 on Twitter and YouTube and all that jazz. So that's it, really. Thank you for listening. All links to everybody's socials and YouTubes and stuff will be in the show notes. And make sure you go and check out the Normandy Newsfeed podcast as well for some more N7Kate and her thoughts on the latest games. So that's it from me. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.
Take care.
Bye, guys. Kraig is here. Well, the other Kraig. Well, Henry Cavill said, "I'll play Shepard," like because he's a huge Mass Effect fan. So he was like, "You write it, I will play. I will step up and I will play Shepard." And I was like, "Hell yes!"
As soon as you do that, you canonize male Shepard, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. So everybody who plays Fem Shep, yeah, maybe. Who knows? I don't know. Oh yeah. Like I say, you can't make everyone happy.
I mean, funnily enough, we actually did a podcast episode about adapting Mass Effect into a TV show.
Did you choose who you'd like to play for different roles?
Kind of did. We kind of... I think I was the one who misunderstood the assignment. And
Just a little bit.
yeah.
All right.
I sort of straight adapted the trilogy, and
Nice.
Tim kind of got really creative with it. And
This is like your pitch. Like, this is my pitch.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
cool. I like that. That's pretty cool.
I put Jennifer Hale as Shepard in it.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's her voice. Honestly, you can't have any. No one else can play Commander Shepard except Jennifer Hale. It's like I'm gonna do next week because I can't do it this week because I just haven't got time. But one of my like subscribers and members on the channel has another Discord group, which is like a Mass Effect group, and they're doing this big community competition at the moment, which is to play through the Legendary Edition on Insanity, and they're going to keep a kill count, like a death count, and like whoever dies the least amount of times like wins at the end of it. They sent me a message going like, please could you join, kind of thing, and I'm like, I just don't have the time, but I might start it next week, and I'm going to do my dumb Shepard run, which is where I get everybody killed, and I cannot play female Shepard. I'm going to have to play male Shep because I would feel guilty with Jennifer Hale's voice just playing like heartless and getting everybody killed. I don't think I can do it. So I'm going to play male Shepard, I think. And I'm going to romance Ashley in 1, romance Miranda in 2, and I think romance Tally in 3. And then I'm going to get Tally killed on Rannoch when she jumps off. Oh God, I can't even bring myself to say it.
It will make you feel a lot better if you just create the Big Dan Gaming Shepard. Just the pink suit and the big goggles.
Yeah. Yes, to create the dumbest looking. Maybe I'll just make him look really good looking. So like he's super attractive, but he's not got much, like, you know.
It's not very smart.
Exactly.
All looks and no brains.